Listen, picture this is it's 3:05 p.m., right? You just walked in the door, you dropped your school bag, made whatever you were going to eat. That was definitely not a real snack, but what was whatever, you found in the cabinet, thrown somewhere or whatnot. You turn on the TV, and right there in the middle of a weekday afternoon on whatever channel that was not playing afternoon cartoons, you landed on, a woman is about to find out who her baby father is on live television in front of a studio audience. Now, a lot of these shows flip-flop. Some of them were in the morning, some of them were in the afternoon, but we're going to just generalize right now and say it was in the afternoon. Now, you just sat down. You were, 12 years old. You had homework, but you were absolutely not going anywhere, right? Because this was what 3 p.m. looked like if you weren't watching cartoons. Or earlier in the morning, in the 90s, if you came home before your parents got back from work, or if you stayed home because you were quote unquote sick. This was the morning or after school programming that nobody officially sanctioned. And well, honestly, everybody watched. We're talking about Jerry Springer, Maury Povich, Ricky Lake, Sally Jesse Raphael, Montel Williams, Jenny Jones, Geraldo. And there was the Richard Bay show that that one was late night. That one was bad. And above all of them, by the way, the queen of daytime who'd stood alone. Let's not forget about Oprah. Now, these weren't just TV shows. They were a curriculum of their own, a completely unsupervised, wildly inappropriate, genuinely unforgettable curriculum in human nature, in conflict, and the full spectrum of what people were willing to do on television in exchange for 15 minutes and a flight to Chicago. Welcome back to In Case I Missed It. I want you guys to pull up a chair, lay down, put your headphones on, get that workout in, because this show is about to start. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to In Case I Missed It, 90s edition, because maybe later on in the future, In Case I Missed It could transform into anything. In Case I Missed It 2000s edition, in case I missed it films, in case I missed it television. It's all there. Now, I'm your host, Alex. It is Saturday morning, so let's start things up. Now, if it is not Saturday morning because you're watching this later on, that's okay too. I want to thank you for even taking the chance to listen. Quick thing on our last episode, the WWF, WCW, Monday Night Wars, Attitude Era, all that good stuff. The Stone Cold, Steve Austin's, The Rock, DX, Sting, Sid Vicious, Diamond Dallas Page, the Monday Night Wars, 84 straight weeks of WCW winning before WWF found its voice and never looked back. And yes, I opened that episode letting you guys know and admitting that I was a WCW kid. That's who I stood with. I stand by it. WCW in 95, 96, 97. Boy, it was real. Go back if you haven't listened to it yet. In case you missed it, go check it out. But today we're going to somewhere that hits a very different part of my memory and hopefully yours, because this is not Saturday night. This is not Saturday mornings. This is a random weekday during the daytime talk show era. And I want to be clear about something before we get into it. These shows were appointment television for an entire generation of kids who were home alone, either because they stayed home because they were sick or they were home alone after school. And not because our parents wanted us watching them, but because the remote was right there and nobody was stopping us. That distinction right there, that whole thing, that is very important. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right. Let me back up and paint a full picture first, because the 90s daytime talk show explosion didn't come from nowhere. It had a parent, Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue ran his show from 1967 all the way to 1996. Nearly 30 years. And what Phil Donahue invented, what he figured out before anyone else, was that you could put regular people on television and talk about real things that were actually happening in their lives. Not celebrities, no script, just people and topics. And an audience, well, they all got to participate in their own way. We know this. That idea that ordinary people's lives were interesting enough for television is the DNA of every talk show that came after him. And in the 90s, that DNA got taken to places Phil Donahue probably never even imagined. Because here's what happened in the late 80s and into the 90s. Television figured out that the more chaotic, the more controversial and more confrontational, the more unscripted the moment, the more people watched. And then someone figured out that you could manufacture the conditions for chaos, still call it real, and people will still watch. The result was a daytime television landscape where every show was competing to be slightly more outrageous than the one before it, and for a window of about a decade, roughly from 1991 to about 2001, that competition produced some of the most compulsively watchable television in the history of the medium. It also produced some things that, looking back, you really have to sit with. But we'll get there. Because every single one of these hosts, we're going to go through this roster, they had a specific energy, a specific lane, and a specific place in the after-school watchability hierarchy. We're going to start here with Oprah. We have to start here because Oprah Winfrey in the 90s was not just the most successful daytime talk show host in history. She was the most powerful person in American media. You can't question it. Talk to your parents about it. Oprah's show ran from 1986 to 2011, 25 years at number one, 25 consecutive years. Nobody could touch the queen of daytime television, Oprah Winfrey. And what made Oprah different from everyone else on this list was that her show could do anything. Celebrity interviews, personal struggles, book recommendations that would basically put any given title on the bestseller list within 48 hours, sit down with presidents, everything. Episodes that genuinely changed how people thought about things. And she did it with a level of emotional intelligence that none of her competitors ever came close to matching. Oprah didn't just host a show. She hosted a relationship with her audience. People felt like they knew her, like she was in their house, like whatever she said mattered, specifically to them. That is a very rare thing, even by television standards. Even now, Oprah in the 90s was operating on a completely different level than anyone else on daytime television. And then, by the way, there was everybody else. For instance, a person we all know by the name of Jerry Springer. Jerry Springer is the conversation that takes the longest because Springer is the most complicated figure on this entire list. Let me give you a quick background. Jerry Springer was the former mayor of Cincinnati. He went into television news, got offered a talk show in 1991. His first year or two, very tame. Very, very tame. Regular topics, political guests, normal fluff. And then the ratings were bad, and they hired a new executive producer. And this producer, they changed everything. Everything. Now, the Jerry Springer Show at its peak in the mid-90s was operating in a category that no other show had created before, and no other show has fully replicated since then. It was not reality television, though they try to mimic it. It was not a documentary. It was not a talk show in any traditional sense. It was basically a damn coliseum. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the families confronting each other, the couples with secrets, situations that escalated in specific, choreographed, but still genuinely chaotic way that made it impossible to look away. The security guard, Steve, we know Steve breaking things up at exactly the right moment to let the tension build right back up. The crowd, just one single chant. Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. Like something between a sporting event and a Roman amphitheater. That's what it reminds me of, basically. Jerry Springer knew what he was. He never pretended otherwise. He ended every episode with a final thought, a calm, thoughtful little monologue about human dignity and compassion that was sincere and completely at odds with what the hell just happened before it. I don't know if that makes it better or freaking worse. I think about it more than I should, because how is this man going to come out here and try to talk sense slowly and carefully after the car crash that just happened on the stage? Let's talk about Maury Povich. Maury started his show in 1991, same year as Springer. Very interesting timing. And Maury's show had a very specific evolution. It started relatively newsy. Maury was a journalist. He had covered real stories, but over time it migrated to a very specific format. You know the format. You know exactly where I'm going. The lie detector test, the paternity test, the slow walk from backstage, right? Maury holding the envelope. When it comes to 2-year-old Jamarcus, you are the father. Or the opposite, you are not the father. And the reaction, it's always the reaction. The running backstage, the rolling on the floor, the screaming, the yelling. As a piece of television, as a repeatable, reliable viewer engagement machine, You Are Not the Father is one of the most effective formats ever produced for daytime TV. Now, it ran for over 30 years. The Maury Povich show didn't end until 2022. Crazy, right? 31 years of paternity tests multiple times a week. Viewers never got tired of it. That is either a masterpiece of television or a profound statement about human nature. Maybe both. Let's talk about Ricki Lake. Now, Ricki Lake holds the record for the youngest talk show host in history. She launched her show at 24 years old. And she didn't just survive this landscape, man. She completely influenced it. Time magazine said in 1995 that Ricki Lake had enormous impact in popularizing tabloid talk shows. Competitors like Springer, Jenny Jones, Montel Williams, they gravitated towards her subject matter and her high-pitched style and saw their ratings jump. Ricki's show, by the way, had a specific energy that the other shows didn't have. It was young, it was loud, the audience was loud, the topics were things that a 20-something audience actually cared about. Relationships, self-image, family drama, the stuff of real life for the age group that was watching. And it worked because Ricky Lake actually seemed to care. Not performing empathy, but actually caring. That distinction came through the screen. Let's talk about Sally Jessy Raphael. Her signature red glasses made for one of the more dignified shows, relatively speaking, by the way, which in this landscape was genuinely saying something. Sally's show started in 1983 and ran to 2002, nearly 20 years. She was the first woman to host a syndicated talk show. And the red glasses were iconic to the point where you saw those glasses and you knew exactly where you were and who you were watching. Sally's show started as genuinely serious journalism. There's a pattern here. Hard topics handled with real care, and then the competition got to her producers and they pushed her towards the tabloid lane. Raphael told People magazine that she hated her final years as a talk show host. She said that I was betrayed by some of the producers into doing that. I should have fought harder for what I knew was right. And that quote right there is the whole story of what happened to daytime television in the second half of the 90s. Everyone was being pulled towards freaking chaos because chaos, well, that was winning the attention and the ratings and people's views. Some hosts went willingly, some hosts were pulled, and some couldn't survive the transition at all. Montel Williams. Montel Williams was a U.S. Marine, all right, and Navy veteran who brought a discipline to the show that none of the others had. Montel's show ran from 1991 to 2008. And what made it distinct was that Montel kept a full-time psychologist on staff to assist guests with their personal struggles long after the cameras stopped rolling. That, my friends, in an era where most shows were treating guests as pure entertainment, people to generate conflict, right? And then release them. Montel was actually trying to help them. That didn't always make for the most explosive television, but it made for something more real. Let's talk about somebody who's still around today, unfortunately. That's just my take on it. Geraldo Rivera. We cannot have this conversation without him as well. Because before Jerry Springer fully owned the title of That Thing Shouldn't Be on TV, but absolutely is, Geraldo had the damn crown. Rivera got a broken nose on his own show. On his own show in 1988 when a white supremacist guest punched him during a brawl that also included audience members. Got his nose broken by a guest. And you know what? His ratings went up after that. That tells you everything you need to know about what the audience wanted from daytime television in this era. Okay? The stuff that people watched, I tell you, that we all watched. I'm guilty of it. Now, let's talk about some other stuff here. Because all of this, the host, the formats, the chaos means something different when you filter it through being a 10, 11, 12-year-old watching it, right? In an empty house after school or if you're homesick in the morning. The after school talk show, like the talk show experience itself, not just after school, but the talk show experience itself in the 90s was its own type of weird education, an education that nobody assigned you. An education that came from sitting there in front of the TV with your snacks and just absorbing what was happening. Because I don't even think our parents even care. Like, they were watching it too. And what was happening was, you know, You were watching adults have conversation about things that adults weren't supposed to talk about anywhere except maybe a therapist's office or with each other. Infidelity, paternity, addiction, secret lives, family betrayals, things said and done and confessed in front of a studio audience of strangers and a national television audience of freaking millions. And as a kid, well, you were just sitting there enjoying it, processing, filling it, filling these plot holes and thoughts in your own head, adding it to your own personal memories. Here's what I think happened to a lot of us who grew up watching these shows. We learned what conflict actually looks like, I think. Not TV conflict, right? Where things are kind of like resolved by the end of the episode. We're talking about like the real conflict, messy conflict, the kind that gets worse before it even gets any better. And sometimes it doesn't get better. We also learned what certain human emotions look like when they're completely unfiltered, like shock, betrayal, grief, humiliation, the specific face someone makes, right? When they find out something they cannot unfind out. You're the father, I slept with your sister, I was with your cousin, I'm actually your fourth remove, cousin, and we've been dating, I never told you that. That's the type of crap they put on 90s television. We learned all of that just from sitting there, just watching these random ass shows. And I don't know if that made us more empathetic or less empathetic. I genuinely don't know. I mean, we're desensitized now to a lot of stuff. Social media has also made it that we kind of just see things and we're like, just weird. I genuinely don't know, man. But at least it made us aware that the world of adults was more complicated than the world we as kids were living in. And that awareness, however, it got delivered to you was something. And honestly, sometimes we were just there because we couldn't find a remote and whatever was on was on. Like we weren't on phones. Maybe you had a magazine or a comic book near you. I don't know. You just sat there and you want to know if Marcus was the father. That was real. Now, I want to talk about something that I think is important to understanding the type of television that we watched in this whole era. Because it didn't just quietly fade out. The daytime talk show era ended in part because something happened that forced a reckoning, something to, change the landscape. The Jenny Jones Show. Jenny Jones ran from 1991 to 2003. Her show was known for makeover episodes, surprise reunions, secret admirers. It was light, it was fun, it was crowd pleasing. In March of 1995, they taped an episode with a secret admirer format. A man named Scott revealed on the show that he had a crush on his neighbor, Jonathan Schmitz. Schmitz didn't know. Now, Scott's crush caught him completely off guard. Okay. 3 days after the taping, Jonathan shot and killed Scott. The family sued Warner Brothers, which produced the show. A Michigan jury awarded them $25 million. That verdict was later overturned on appeal. But the damage to the show, to the genre, to the conversation about what these shows were doing, that didn't go away. Because the question that the trial raised was one the whole genre had been quietly avoiding for years. What is the responsibility of a talk show to the people it puts on television? When you manufacture, right, the conditions, the confrontations, when you bring strangers together specifically to create a dramatic moment, right, and something goes wrong, whose fault is it? The industry didn't have a clear answer. What it had was just a huge decline that gradually happened. The mid to late 90s saw the whole genre start to pull back. Standards shifted. Audiences grew tired of it. Cable was exploding, and there was more to watch than there had ever been before. So by the early 2000s, the golden era of daytime television tabloid talk was effectively over. What remained was Maury and his paternity test, which continued until 2022, and Jerry Springer, who ran until 2018, passed away in 2023. And Oprah, who kept going until she chose to stop in 2011. But that's a whole thing on its own, because she even opened up her own network. That specific energy, though, the chaotic, anything goes, let's put this person in front of a live studio audience and see what happens type of energy show, that was a 90s thing, specific to that decade, specific to that window, and we were all there for it. Now let's head over to our Did You Know, though segment. Here are 3 things. Number 1, Jerry Springer was not always Jerry Springer. Before the show, before any of it, Jerry Springer was the former mayor of Cincinnati. He was the actual mayor of an actual freaking city. He ran for governor of Ohio in 1982 and came in second in the Democratic primary. The man who presided over some of the most chaotic television in American history, was a serious political figure who nearly became governor of a major American state. I'm not going to say anything political, but you see where we are in the world today. He got into television as a news anchor and commentator. He was respected in that world, and then the talk show came along, and then the talk show took a direction, and the rest is American cultural history. Jerry Springer, the mayor of Cincinnati, still kind of, it's not wild to me. Look at the mayor of Knoxville now. Goddamn brother of The Undertaker. Number 2, the Sally Jesse, easy for me to say. The Sally Jesse Raphael red glasses that became one of the most recognized accessories in all of daytime television history. Well, all of that was an accident. For the show's debut, Raphael needed glasses to read questions and ran next door to borrow a pair. Station managers initially didn't like them. A producer changed their minds by having Raphael model uglier pair of glasses, like something that was not going to be complimentary, and letting the comparison do the work. Well, the red glasses stayed. They became the whole thing. You saw those glasses and you knew exactly what show you were watching. One borrowed pair of glasses became the most recognizable symbol of a 20-year television career. Number 3, Oprah Winfrey's book club, launched in September of 1996, had the ability to put any book onto the bestsellers list almost immediately after she recommended it. The publishing industry nicknamed this the Oprah effect. In the history of American book publishing, going back centuries, no single person had ever had the level of influence over the books that they bought. Not a president, not a major critic, not any magazine or newspaper. One woman on a daytime talk show could move the entire American book market with a single recommendation. Now we have companies buying up books, cutting up binders, scanning them, burning the books, all to teach AI. I'm not going to get into that here. Now, that's not influence. That's a different category of thing entirely. Talking about Oprah. Oprah in the 90s was a force of nature that the entire entertainment industry is still trying to understand 30 years later. And she did it all between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m., 1 hour. Kind of crazy. Now, let's get into our top 5 segment here. And let me just say, I love this list. I love it because it's the most, I cannot believe we watched this as freaking kids list I've done. And also the most, I would absolutely watch every single one of these damn right now again. We never outgrow it. Both things are true simultaneously, friends. Top 5 moments every 90s kid remembers. From these daytime talk shows. Let's get to it. Number 5, the episode where someone walked out and the whole audience went crazy. You know this moment. The host is setting something up. There's clearly a guest backstage. The person sitting in the chair has no idea what's coming. And then the host turns to the curtain. Let's bring them out. And the music hits, some daytime TV stinger, and the doors open. And whoever walks out causes the entire studio audience to collectively lose their minds. Maybe it's the person's ex, maybe it's the person's secret admirer, maybe it's someone from 15 years ago. It didn't matter. The specific chaos that erupted in a damn studio audience of 200 people who's been waiting all morning for that exact moment. That energy came through the television. You felt it in the living room, sitting there in the morning or after school, just having your breakfast or your snack. You felt the whole thing. You too were in awe. You were, oh my God. You were. You were. We all were. That was number 5. Number 4, watching Maury open the damn envelope. Hear me out, because there's something about the specific pacing of that Maury format, the build-up, the envelope, the pause before he reads the results. That was genuinely designed to maximize the moment. And it worked every single time. Okay, you could have watched 4 episodes in a row. You could have known exactly what was coming. You could have had a reasonable theory about the outcome before the break. And Maury would still pick up that envelope, pause, look at it, and then look at the person, and then look back at the audience, and then read it. And you'd be holding your breath, clutching your pearls. Every time. That's television. That's what it means to understand pacing. You are not the father. And then the running, the iconic running backstage, the rolling on the floor, the screaming, and Maury walking after them calmly in his press khakis, his composure, trying to keep things intact, while everyone else lost it. That was number 4. Number 3, Jerry Springer's final thought. Stay with me here, because this is the most genuinely strange thing about that damn show. And I don't think it gets enough appreciation because every single episode, after all the damn chaos, after the confrontations, after everything, Jerry sat down, the lights changed, the music changed, everything went quiet, and Jerry Springer delivered a brief, sincere, thoughtful monologue about love, dignity, compassion, and understanding. Complete tonal whiplash. Zero transition. Just, hey, here's a gentle reflection on human nature. Immediately after someone threw a chair at someone's head. And that's wild. And it worked. It just did. It worked because Jerry Springer delivered those final thoughts like he meant every word. And I think he actually did, which is the most complicated thing about that whole Jerry Springer show. The man who ran the wildest circus on American television genuinely seemed to care about people. Those two things lived with him. And I don't know what to do with that, because it's like professional wrestling on daytime television. That was number 3. Number 2, whatever was happening on Geraldo that you absolutely should not have been watching. Geraldo Rivera's show, like I mentioned before, ran from 87 to 98, and Geraldo operated in his own specific lane. The lane of topics that felt like they were too serious for tabloid and too sensational for the damn news. Gangs, cults, underground subcultures, things that existed in the world that a kid in the suburbs of the inner city, or the inner city, I should say, had heard, referenced, but had never seen it explained on television. And as a kid watching Geraldo, you felt like you were seeing something you weren't supposed to see, not because it was explicit, but because it was freaking real. Now you get it all the time on social media, right? Real situations, things that are happening around you. You don't need the talk show anymore. You're getting it directly from the people that you used to go watch as an audience member. That was number 2. And number 1, the moment you were watching a talk show, right? And you didn't hear your parent come home, and you were 3 episodes deep into something you absolutely were not supposed to watch, and the front door opened, or you heard the walking up the stairs, the remote control search, immediately you were frantically, desperately looking for it, trying to shut the damn TV off. Where the hell is the damn remote? Or you just ran up to the television and pressed the button on it. Yeah, we had to do that back in the day, right? You're looking frantically for a way to shut this off. The TV was loud as hell, and whatever is happening on the screen is not subtle, that's for sure. Right? You either change it or shut it off. You find something acceptable. You assume that the most innocent position you can, physically achieve, whether it was laying there or pretending you were not doing what you were just doing 30 seconds ago. Right? Mom or dad comes home. How was school? Well, it was good. It was all right. I've just been chilling here, thinking about stuff. And then you sit there for the next 45 minutes wondering if they saw anything on their way through the door or heard it because you had the damn TV blasting. And they probably did. They just never said anything because the unwritten agreement of the 90s household was that, hey, if I didn't see it, it didn't happen. You kept it moving. That was number one. Drop your list. Drop your list in the comments. Tell me what your specific talk show memory is. Tell me which host was your guilty pleasure. Tell me if you were a Maury person or a Jerry person, because that tells me a lot about you. Friends, this was episode 10, and here's what I want to leave you with. The 90s daytime talk show era gets remembered mostly for the chaos, right? The chair throws, the paternity test, the things that in retrospect raised a ton of questions. And those things are real. The questions are real. But here's the other thing that's real. For a generation of kids coming home to empty homes, or who stayed home because their parents had to go to work and stayed alone, these shows were company. They were loud. They were messy. They were there in a house that was quiet and felt big for one person to be alone in. The TV was on and people were talking and the audience was reacting and something was happening. And some of those somethings, right, were things we probably didn't need to absorb at that young of an age, which we protect our own children now from taking in. But some of those somethings were real conversations about real parts of life that nobody else was having personally with us. They were happening on television. So that's how we got a lot of the answers that we were searching for. Now, Oprah bringing humanity to things that the culture wanted to ignore. Montel actually helping people when the cameras stopped. Ricky Lake making young people feel seen in a world that mostly talked over them. The era wasn't just chaos. It was also sometimes in the right moments, genuinely, I want to say human. And we got to watch it grow up and get weird and eventually go too far and then come back down. That's a full story. And we lived it in the 90s and it was ours. Friends, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if this episode took you somewhere, if you heard the words, "You are not the father," and went immediately to a very specific place in your mind. Go leave that review right now, 30 seconds, it matters. Share this episode with whoever watched those shows with you, or talked about it with you, or whoever walked in at the wrong moment and saw that the TV was on. They know who they are. Send it. Next week, though, we're staying in the after-school lane, but moving from TV to the drive-through window. Next week is the top 10 fast food restaurants of the 90s. McDonald's Happy Meal toys, the Pizza Hut Book It program, where you earned a personal pan pizza by just reading books, which was, goddamn, the greatest marketing idea in the history of childhood. We had Wendy's Super Bar, the Taco Bell menus that were 59 cents, 79 cents, 99 cents, Burger King Kids Club, and the ranking that is going to make people probably genuinely upset. My own rankings. Everyone has their own rankings on fast food, especially from our childhood, because everyone has a strong opinion, right, about fast food from their childhood. No list is the same. And now if you try to eat any of that stuff, you're probably in the hospital for a week. Come back next Saturday morning. We'll be here, or whenever you listen to these episodes or watch them. I'm Alex, and as always, in case I missed it, the 90s were better. See you on the next episode.